B-E-A, F, beefus, Mr. Head. I'm all done.
Your name? All this time? And that's all you wrote was your name?
Yeah, I wrote my name too, yeah, see? Beefus. Now, wait a minute, wait, that's not right.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Brick Pit, the internet's premier place to talk about and listen to opinions of old people, middle-aged men discussing the important issues of the day. And by that, I mean films from 30 years ago. Sometimes
I love how prepared you were with that intro. It shows.
Dude, I wrote that. It's in the draft. Pauses and all. So we are the Brick Pit, and we do talk about movies and film. If this is your first time listening, thank you. It gets a little bit better than this, and then it kind of gets it gets kind of worse, and then there's like 2 or 3 funny parts, and then you'll finish mowing the lawn. So
it's like Thanksgiving dinner.
That's right.
You got to listen to a lot of old references that you don't understand.
Just like Thanksgiving dinner, you can get through this, man.
It's better if you pregame before you start listening. That's
yeah. This is not sober listening.
It's not sober recording.
Touché. So with me, as always, are the 2 not intrepid co-hosts. A man who unironically calls himself a hippie, Adam.
I don't understand why that's such a big problem for you.
Because he knows the definition of a hippie.
If you've never been barefoot at a Fish concert, I don't want to hear it.
I'm barefoot at a Fish concert right now. Where do you think I'm calling in from?
Yes, but you're at their show at the Sphere, so that's doesn't count.
A rich hippie is still a hippie.
No, that's what we call trustafarians. Trust fund kids. And also we have my lifelong companion, man I met at movie school. That would be Mr. Jason. Hello, Mr. Jason.
Yes, and much like our movie school tuition, this friendship really hasn't borne fruit.
hasn't paid off. You're like my student loan debt. You hadn't paid off. Well, today I want to talk about. I guess it's a genre. It's more of an idea, but it kind of butts up against another genre. So I think that we're going to have to take some time to define at least how we understand the differences between these 2 similar, but they are differences with a distinction. I want to talk about satire. To set up the discussion, I do want to define satire and define parody. There is overlap, but I think that there is a distinction.
Is this going to be like Alanis Morissette defining irony? Is that what I'm about to hear?
Yes. I'm just going to read Alanis Morissette lyrics for 2 hours.
He's going to call you during dinner.
My podcast satire will be reading the lyrics from Taylor Swift's new album straight, and then ending the podcast. Like, this has been satire. Very Andy Kaufman of me. So, satire is defined as the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the context of contemporary politics and other topical issues. Parody is an imitation of style of a particular writer, artist, or genre with deliberate exaggeration for comedic effect. So, satire done well is often
unrecognized,
and the example that's always given is A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift, which calls to attention the famine in Ireland, I believe.
Right.
And it's like, well, they're so hungry. Why don't they just eat babies? And people are like, oh my God. He's like, it's satire. It's really just him backpedaling because he was met with such revision.
See, he was actually about to release a baby cookbook, and he was setting up for that, and it just didn't work. So that never got published.
The modest proposal was, I mean, if you've read the whole thing, it is basically a how to cook babies cookbook. It's like, here's how you do it, and then so he set on it. He let it release, and then the backlash was immediate, right? But he didn't respond right away, and then his response later was sort of like Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future. It's like, this is a new thing. You kids just aren't ready for it yet.
And he was correct. And it's funny that satire often does need to marinate because it is critical. And so, like, filmically, I would say, like, the scary movies are parodies.
Yeah,
they take things in the genre and just like blow them up real big. Like there's that bit in one of them where every time it cuts to the sheriff, her hat's a little bit bigger. Like,
but they're deliberately mocking very specific films.
Right.
That's the main structure, and then you might have different little sight gags or wordplay around.
But it's also there's not a depth to it.
Well, it's deliberately unoriginal in the subject matter. It's just it's twisting it for humorous effect.
Yeah, I would say like the Airplanes movies, I would say are parody and not satire. Versus like Black Dynamite, to me, is probably one of the best satire of a genre. I mean, there is political stuff in the film, but it is more.
It is more kind of almost on the parody level because the political stuff in the film is because of the political context of a lot of exploitation films.
But satire doesn't necessarily have to be comedic, too, where parody is typically always comedic.
So to me, the difference that when I was trying to parse this out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I ask you?
You did. Yeah, but Jason already edited that part out, so you didn't. He'll fix that in post. The difference to me is satire, when understood, points out an uncomfortable truth.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas parody sometimes stumbles across that, but usually is just to make fun of something where you're also in on the joke.
Right. Well, it is also satire is almost, it to me is akin to, was it reductio ad absurdum?
Yes.
Right.
Like it's taking something to
extreme. Yeah.
Like I would say that
That's a good, yeah.
In many ways, make sure it's not in anybody's list. Jason's film falls very much into that.
Yes.
But that it is like, it's prescient because, and I think my film is too, it's prescient in that it sees like, hey, this is the road we're on and this is where it's going to end up.
Yeah.
If it was taken to its logical conclusion. But I think a lot of the filmmakers and people that engage in satire do it as like a warning less than a prediction.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in our world, nobody got that memo and just, just cut the brakes and went.
Well, it's like it's a great line I heard someone try to describe like dystopian fiction. Right. And it's like dystopian fiction isn't trying to predict the future. They are criticizing the present.
It's not supposed to be a blueprint. It's supposed to be a warning.
Right. Well, and that's it. And we've talked a lot about media literacy and stuff. And I think ultimately,
there's a big
like
issue with that.
It is an issue because on X this week with there's been a lot of talk about the Fallout TV show, which is kind of parody and satire. I think it's all over the map.
Yeah.
But there's this tweet or whatever that blew up where someone was like, "Oh, the show is so much funnier when you realize they use the same musical cue every time they show Walton Goggins' character." And somebody replied like, somebody tell these people that they just discovered the leitmotif. Like, like this isn't new. Like, you should
watch
you
Star
should know
Wars.
that, right? The fact that you don't know that is terrifying, because it's like, for us that grew up saturated in narratives like this and stuff, like it's second nature.
Part of it is the dumbing down of, like we've talked about in a recent episode, how a lot of stuff is made for like to be the second screen behind, which means that the effort behind it doesn't have to be as pronounced. And so these classical film techniques or storytelling techniques are hard work as a showrunner to pull off, to maintain continuity, to continue the storyline, whatever. This is why when audiences see something like Shogun or, you know, like you said, the Fallout or whatever, where there is an attention to detail, there's attention to traditional storytelling, they don't know why it resonates, because they don't have that, but they know this is different somehow.
It's because, and again, this is not bagging on Marvel films or DC films and stuff, because I'm a big consumer of them, but that's sugar smacks. I mean, it really is. Yeah. And so when you get something that is adult or competent, or just takes, like, Marvel films aren't known for their cinematography.
Correct.
They're not. They're shot fine, but they're not. You don't get a lot of.
Some of them are not. Some of them are not competently filmed. I mean, there are serious issues from a filmography perspective that.
Right, and then you said, like, Shogun is a good example. Like, Shogun is beautiful. It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't.
There's composition to the shot.
There's composition. It also doesn't hold your hand. Like, it's. I know a lot of people that, like, have had to told me, like, I watched it and I didn't like it, and I had to wait and watch it again. And it's like, you know, because it throws you in there. It's like, well, no, it's going to have subtitles. These people speak Japanese.
You can't be looking down at your phone and because there's subtitles. You have to watch
and just the world is what the world is, and it's up to you to figure it out. And it gives you all the information, but it doesn't. It
doesn't spoon feed you.
Yeah, I just recently watched Late Night with the Devil, which I thought was a good film, but. So it's like takes place in the 70s, and it's supposed to be this kind of found footage thing, like this talk show where they had this girl that was possessed and all hell breaks loose, pun intended. What was off-putting to me is, like, first there's kind of like a stinger at the beginning. There's like this whole 4-minute intro that has like a voiceover, and it's showing like the main characters and like kind of setting everything up like you're watching a documentary on Netflix. And then it's like, and here is the broadcast that night, and then it cuts to the broadcast, but then there'll be these black and white portions that are like behind the scenes kind of stuff, and it's all like all that stuff is really expositional. And I would rather have watched the film just be what was on air, you know, like what they've
just throw you in,
what they've
be wild,
what they filmed, and be like look at this wild footage,
right?
And I think it would have been a much stronger film that way.
This is like the Blade Runner voiceover, right? Somebody along the lines like
it also would not have been as successful,
right?
Like exactly. I fully acknowledge that, and I'm not saying that like, oh, I'm better than. It's like I hope that I have a higher media literacy than a lot of people, because I went to the movie school.
I thought you were about to say midi-chlorian count.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Look, they took my lady's Bic razor and called in my midi-chlorian count.
But to your point, it is, I think there's not only it's not media literacy, but there's lack. This is old man rant, right? This is sitting on get off my lawn level talk.
That's the podcast.
Yeah. But there is a general sense, and I think it's not, I'm not even going to characterize it as the quote younger generation or whatever.
No, we're all subject to it.
I think there is a lack of historical understanding that pretty much most people have these days, unless they went out of their way to study history. Most
people's history starts the day they were born.
Yeah. And
that's the truth. Nobody really thinks.
To get these heady concepts like satire, to get really good satire, you got to get what they're making fun of. And that takes some context and historical knowledge. even in the present day, even if it's a present day satirization of something, it
takes involvement with society.
You got to be understanding of what.
Well, and ultimately, that's the danger of satire. Satire done well is almost indistinguishable. I would say that if it's indistinguishable from what you're satirizing, then you failed. But it's that skirting right up to the line. I'm just talking, man.
I'll let you have it.
But it's getting as close to that line as you can get without crossing it.
Another way to say that might be.
Go ahead and say your own line.
Yeah, no, before the show we were talking, and I said when satire fails to be understood, it functions exactly the same way as propaganda does.
Yeah,
and that we will see that in the examples we talk about tonight, but we can also see it.
I don't think that that Lenny Riefenstahl falls into satire, but I'll let you make your case.
Look it up, people.
A Birth of the Nation is a fine film. I get what you're saying.
D.W. Griffith was a great satirist. But it kind of like my problem with The Village, the M. Night Shyamalan film, is it's that intent. I don't know if he intended what I got out of it or not. So I think that's why the film ultimately failed. And it's also like Roadhouse.
Yeah,
is infinitely fascinating to me because like I have convinced myself that it is satire because I refuse to believe that somebody wrote that story and honestly like straight he's the bouncer and he's the best bouncer in the world and he's also a Buddhist and he says things like pain don't hurt. Like come on, man.
It also touches on what we've talked about a whole bunch, which is where people take the wrong lessons from movies. They identify poorly they lionize the wrong characters.
You know what man, I really wish I was at Javier Bardem. And that No Country for Old Men. That dude, he was free. He was free. He traveled wherever he wanted. Nobody's holding him down.
Well, there's also like, and I think this falls into the media literacy thing is like just because you're following somebody's perspective doesn't make them a good person,
right?
Like, and that's okay, and it's like that's okay. I think that there's a need that because you watch somebody on the screen from their point of view, you're automatically kind of on their side, and then when they do things despicably, it's like Breaking Bad. You want to try to justify it because it's like that's the lesson is that you could very much do that. Any of us could become Macbeth if we got too ambitious, like that's the warning. And it's like, yes, you have empathy for this person because you understand why they went down this road, but you choose, it doesn't make it right. The big one that we talk about a lot is Falling Down. It's a sympathetic character that is wrong.
Yeah. you get it. You understand why he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah. You understand it's not right to threaten people at Burger King with a gun. You get that, right?
To get a little nerdy on this point, though, it could be equally, especially with specifically with modern film, is that a filmmaker's duty is to meet his audience where they are. And if the satire is so, quote, so excellently conducted that it's missed by the audience as it's satire, then
it's failed.
Then it has failed, and that's the producer and director's fault because they've pushed beyond the boundaries of the capabilities of their audience to understand what they're trying to get at. And that's
right.
Bad.
It's like curling, man. You want to get
as close as possible,
as close to the center as possible.
Right.
I also think, like, I'm not a person who believes in just one philosophy on filmmaking or even art. Like, there's several aspects that it can fill, but there's also times when a filmmaker tries to elevate the audience up to another level. That's tricky, and a lot of times most people don't get it, but when people do, it's a revelation to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, art is complicated. Ultimately, it stems from the inherent need for expression. There's schools of thought of whether intent even matters,
Yeah.
and I think in some of the films that we're going to talk about, I think that that's a relevant discussion of, does it matter that's what the intent was?
Yeah.
I'm like you, Jason. It's like maybe sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it's just connecting with the audience. However, the audience connects with. I think we love to do references to wrestling, and so here's a great one. Macho Man Randy Savage said, "The worst thing an audience can do is nothing."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. The worst reaction that you can get is indifference in a film. Like and we've talked about that before. Like films that are like it's all right. It doesn't do anything one way or another. It doesn't make you mad because that's why bad films are sometimes enjoyed. Because you feel. Right. So it's like at least I felt something. Like. I felt alive watching this film, even if it was abhorrence and hatred. And whether that was the intent or not, sometimes artistically that is the intent. The intent is to get a rise out of the audience. Sometimes the intent is to elevate a point of view. It's and it's very like Jay said, it's very difficult to do well. So it's when it is done well, and no attempt should be like. We talk about that a lot. We make fun of films and stuff like that, but it takes a lot to make a movie.
Yeah.
We understand that. And at the end of the day, you made a movie and we didn't. So,
but we've talked a lot on this podcast about movies that when they were released, people didn't like them or people didn't understand them. And then later on, someone's, oh, okay, I get it now.
Mm-hmm. And again, that's also like a function of access to media, because there's often talks of why did they erase the old Doctor Who's or the moon landing and stuff like that? It's like because that just wasn't the mindset. Like a movie would come out. That's why a bunch of pre-Hays Code movies are just gone. Just because you played a movie
to literally be consumed.
Yeah, it went to the theater, and then nobody cared what happened to it. It wasn't until much later, in the invention of Betamax and VHS and home video.
Well, even that, television gave a second rise to
you're right.
to B movies.
Absolutely,
and,
because it was cheap and they could show.
Yeah.
And only then because it could be done profit. Like there was a profit motive to continue to sell.
Right. So when my dad was growing up in the 40s, the thought of owning a movie, what are you talking about? Own a movie to watch whenever you want. That's crazy.
Right.
And now we're having you need to keep the media because the streamers won't stream it anymore, and you got to hoard it. And it's just a whole different mindset. But with that comes.
If we can we divert for just a second on that point you just made? Because I read
You're already there, man.
I read an interesting thing about a guy that I follow who does a lot of home media stuff, and he mentioned this was back when I think Voodoo shut down.
Yeah,
and he had
Voodoo.
He had gone all in on that service, and so he had I'll just make up a number 900 movies that he had purchased that basically he just lost, and so he made a decision going forward though. Not to replace them with physical media, but not to replace them at all. And essentially said, the movies that I love that are my true favorite movies of all time, I'll go buy those. But those other 900 movies that I owned, he goes, I had those for over a decade and I might have watched one other time after I purchased it. And there was no real value add other than being a collector to have to owning it, to quote unquote, owning it. And his whole thing was I never really owned it because it was digital and it just disappeared. Right. And I'm curious what you think about is there a value for individuals to hoard movies that you may or may not ever watch again?
I mean, framing it that way is interesting. And I do see collector versus, because there is that aspect of it. And that all that, I mean, that is just consuming and preserving media is all of this is in its infancy in the great scheme of things.
Yeah, and I'm trying to decide what I want to do.
Right, culturally. Well, it's like your book collection. You're not going to reread all those books you have.
That's a fair point. Right.
You're a collector, right? So like you curate what you have, and I do as well as far as media. I may not watch, Afterlife or Seven Samurai in a decade, but it's it's pride of ownership. It's
there's something
like,
nice about knowing
it's like an art collection. Like I collect board games.
Me too.
I have a lot of board games that I will not play because I don't have anybody to play them with, or for whatever reason. But I enjoy.
The
curating.
Possibility is there, right? That's what you
right. Honest to God, my hobby is more. That's why I say I'm a board game collector. My hobby is more collecting and researching and reading about board games than playing them. Like like sleeving the little card. I'm all in. I'm like sleeving cards. Like, well, I don't want these cards to get bent up. It's like I haven't played this game in 15 years. The cards aren't getting bent up.
Josh just keeps checking off the old man with the podcast list. Okay. Board games.
Boy, sleeving cards with Josh.
There is I've a few DVDs that I got because I really enjoyed the movies that weren't maybe that popular, may have a cult success like Bubba Hotep. Mm-hmm. They're not in print anymore. No one's making those DVDs, and they're not on streaming services.
Well, another example is like 28 Days Later is gone. You can't find 28 Days Later to purchase digitally anywhere.
Oh, good. I've got that on DVD.
I have it on DVD too. So see, that's an example of and it's just disappeared. There's some kind of
Near Dark is another one. Yeah. Those are films that are near and dear. Right. That you don't want to.
I haven't watched 28 Days Later in probably 7 or 8 years, or maybe longer. But
I think I'm very much a collector though, because I've got boxes of comic books. I have vinyl records. I probably listen to more records than I do read comic books. But I mean, that's just. I
go through phases with my hobbies too, where I'll focus on books for a while, and then I'll get kind of bored of that, and then I'll do board games, and then
my childhood home was destroyed in Katrina, and I lost a lot of stuff, and that psychologically affected me. There was a time where it was first it was liberating, I didn't need all that stuff, and I'm still here.
And then the first time you need it and you reach for it, it's not there.
And then I'm going to every comic book shop I can find and buying all these packages, and they end up putting them in a steel case, and no one's ever going to take them from me again.
You have the Unity Saga, for the love of God, man! Tell me you have the Unity Saga.
Yes, Jason knows me very well. He knows my proclivities. So anyway, satire. This podcast is a parody and not a satire.
That's true. A parody of ourselves, mostly.
Pretty accurate of ourselves. A parody of podcast.
Navel gazing is what we do here.
So, Jason, do you have a satire named after the Greek god? Isn't it the satyr, the little goat man?
Yeah, he's not a god, but he is a.
He is in my eyes.
So my first choice, because Josh actually chose one of the ones that I wanted to talk about. So really, really good choice, Josh, you son of a. But mine is the 2006 movie from probably one of the best American satirists around now, Mike Judge, and it's Idiocracy.
At the dawn of the 21st century, the Army began a top-secret experiment.
Meet Joe Bowers, our first subject for the human hibernation experiment. As you know, this is highly classified. However, if successful, we believe humans can be stored indefinitely.
However, the trial run was prone to human error.
See you in a year.
And Joe slept slightly longer than expected. Half a millennium, to be exact. From Mike Judge, creator of Office Space and Beavis and Butthead.
Oh my God!
If you were the smartest person in the world...
This goes in your mouth. This one goes in your butt.
Hang on a second. This one goes in your mouth.
And we're stuck with the dumbest people in history.
If you have one bucket that holds 2 gallons and another bucket that holds 5 gallons, how many buckets do you have?
2? What would you do?
Excuse me, I'm actually supposed to be getting out of prison.
You're in the wrong line.
I'm the smartest guy in the world? Says who?
The IQ test you took in prison. You got the highest score in history.
Even smarter than President Camacho.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of America! In the year 2505,
we got this guy. He's gonna fix everything. So you smart, huh?
the ordinary will be considered extraordinary.
I thought your head would be bigger.
Idiocracy.
For the smartest guy in the world, you're pretty dumb sometimes.
And this is a movie that succeeds in its purpose, I think. Like,
yes, it is one of those that, honestly, though not intended to be, has become a bit prophetic.
Yes.
Yeah. But people got it like immediately. There was nobody like fetishizing this future that was.
And this was it was very weird that, like, you know, so like Office Space, which became a cult classic, just huge in the back end of things, you know, like it really seeped into the culture. This film was not.
It's picking up steam. I think it's going to have that.
No, it had the same. It had the same slow steam burn as Office Space because Fox didn't give it a big release.
Right? They hit it. Yeah.
They deliberately moved it to like cable and DVDs because they thought, like Office Space, it wasn't going to do well in the theaters and it was going to create this cult phenomena. And that's exactly what happened to it.
It's true.
They did the same thing with this film Extract. Like Mike Judge has been. His movies have been screwed over. Yeah. Like give the guy a chance, man. He
I mean,
propels the culture single-handedly.
He lays at home at night wiping his tears with $100 bills. But yeah, I mean, let's all feel bad for poor Mike Judge.
If you look at his output, everything's been satire from Beavis and Butthead, King of the Hill, Silicon Valley.
I think he would even admit that Beavis and Butthead largely was a failure because it was not perceived
as
like Beavis and Butthead. The real Beavis and Buttheads were like, "This is awesome."
I found my people.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh no."
Yeah,
but yet it became a cultural milestone because they brought the show back in the past decade, and there's now a very famous Saturday Night Live bit that utilizes Beavis and Butthead. So he succeeds in one half of it and not quite so much with people getting it. But Idiocracy is very much on the nose. Like there's no subtlety to this. I mean, there is, but it is the front end is so exaggerated that there's no way for you to confuse it with it being, you know, like another movie we'll talk about later.
Yeah. And I think though, but to Josh's point though, I'm curious how it would have felt without the narration, because the narrator walks you through, it holds your hand through the satire, right?
Yeah. Again, I think though that just like Late Night for the Devil, ultimately it's kind of necessary.
Yeah, it is very much it's not the Blade Runner adding on after the fact. It is.
No, I agree.
Clearly,
I agree
it is clearly used. Yes, to make the point very clear at the beginning.
Right,
and the whole concept is the fact that we are not benefiting from evolution anymore.
It's the
we
dumb
created
breed faster than the smart. That's basically the premise.
Like that opening sequence is hilarious, where they have this couple that, you know, it shows their IQs, and it's like, you know, 140
kids in this economy. Are you kidding me? You know? Yeah,
we're waiting to have kids because we need to be responsible for that. And then just like this white trash who just he keeps having affairs with multiple women. And just like it shows their family tree, and just like his just keeps sprawling out.
Clovis or something. What was his name?
Yeah.
I'm pregnant again.
So the stupid are breeding faster, and therefore the IQ is dropping. And also, you could say that our society keeps lowering the bar and making everything to the lowest possible level. Like, that's why you see that's why you see warning labels on everything. It's like, do not try and swallow this lava lamp. That's on there because they had to put that on there for a reason.
Give a brief synopsis of the plot, and then.
So the concept is that Luke Wilson is a librarian for the Army, and he likes it because it's a do-nothing job. He doesn't do anything, and there's this great line when this guy is telling that he's being reassigned and all that kind of stuff. This general is like, yes, but when the general says, lead, follower, get out the way, I always get out the way. It's like, that's not what that's supposed to do. It's supposed to embarrass you into not doing anything to either make you lead or follow.
But I'm not embarrassed. Is what he's saying.
I'm not embarrassed.
I'll be honest, I've never identified with the line more.
Yes, he plays the everyman. Like, he is spectacularly average. Like, he's not stupid, but he's not intelligent either. He's middle of the road on everything.
He's baseline.
Yes.
Right. Average weight, average intelligence, average height. They make a big joke about that kind of thing,
So the concept is that the Army, in order to preserve like their best soldiers for when they need it, have come up with like this hibernation program. And so they're going to test it on expendable people. And since he's average, he's expendable. They couldn't find a female within the military ranks that matches him to use this. So they use a prostitute. And there's this great bit where the major who's like in charge of it is just like talking about like hanging out with the pimp. And it's just like the pimp, he's got like all these slides of him just like getting drunk and everything with the pimp and all with prostitutes in it.
And the joke there also is that if you've ever done anything military adjacent, the PowerPoint being the primary mode of delivery of information and his like 700 slides of him drinking cognac with the pimp is just
I can either confirm or deny the truth of that. That is.
So he and the woman played by Maya Rudolph are put into hibernation. They're supposed to be in hibernation for a year. But then they, of course, find out that this major has been associating with the pimp and using it to essentially run a prostitution ring on basis and everything. So he gets busted. And this thing is so top secret, like no one else knows about it. And they just demolish the base. So they wind up getting thrown in the scrap pile. And 500 years goes by, and just the dumbing down of society. They are literally mountains of garbage all around because they can no longer even do the simplest things themselves.
Very Wall-E.
Yeah, there's a great line that the narrator talks about, like everything happening in the intervening years. They see the intelligence is declining. They realize maybe genetic manipulation can do it, but all of the great scientists were working on hair replacement and erectile dysfunction drugs. There's this great garbage landslide. Luke Wilson is awoken to this really strange world where it takes everything to the extreme. So instead of just wearing your, Nike t-shirt or whatever, like the shirt is just full of logos, like you were racing for NASCAR, and everyone's name, like someone has like a brand name in their name. Like one of the guys that plays by Dak Shepard, his name is Frito. He's walking around this world and he doesn't quite understand what's going on. And it's just, everything just really gets kind of twisted up. And he winds up, because of the de-evolution of intelligence in society, he is now the smartest man in the world.
Right.
And they're talking about like he was doing like this intelligence test. And it's like, if you have one bucket that carries 2 gallons and another bucket that carries 5 gallons, how many buckets do you have? And so he is brought in to like fix the world's problem. One of the most famous bits is Terry Crews plays the president.
Right.
Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Camacho.
Who recently reprised that role at I think it was South by Southwest a couple of years ago.
One of my favorite bits because like the language has devolved, and like there's one talking about like there's so much slang and everything that Luke Wilson could understand what they were saying, but because he's talking just like a regular modern day English, they didn't, and they like took him as being effeminate and everything, and words are like pronounced differently and things like they instead of the Supreme Court, it's the Extreme Court.
Right.
And my absolute favorite is when President Camacho talks to the essentially a State of the Union address. First off, he comes into like music, like he's a wrestler, which is actually one of his previous jobs, wrestler and porn star. But the chamber that he's talking to is the House of Representatives.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of America! President Camacho! Sit your monkey ass down. Chill out. Now, I understand everyone's shit's emotional right now, but listen up. I got a 3-point plan to fix everything. Break it down. Number 1, we got this guy not sure. Number 2, he's got a higher IQ than any man alive. And number 3, he's gonna fix everything. I give you my word as president. He'll fix the problems with all the dead crops. He's gonna make them grow again. And that ain't all. I give you my word. He's gonna fix the dust storms too. I give you my word. He's gonna fix the economy. He's so smart. He's gonna do it all in 1 week.
President Camacho stood before the world and promised everyone that Joe would solve all their problems. He would not only end the Dust Bowl and heal the economy, but he would cure acne and car sickness as well. And if he didn't, President Camacho made another promise. He would kick Joe's smart balls all the way up to the roof of his smart mouth, and then he would throw his brainy ass back in jail.
You have to watch it. It is utterly brilliant. It skewers essentially the anti-intellectual
movement.
Yeah, movement that really has gone on. Like, when you're a kid in high school, oh, you read, nerd. Like it's that to the extreme.
Well, but so one of the critiques of the film is the kind of presupposition that intelligence is totally genetic. And I think ultimately it's a non-issue because I don't think that's really what the film is about. It's about society's slow degradation. But the whole premise is stupid people will have stupid children and smart people have smart children. But in reality, there are lots of smart people that have stupid children and lots of, stupid people that end up having brilliant children. But again, that's kind of like one of those minutia of it's like, well, you're not getting what the film is about. Yeah. The film is not about that. It's about where society is going, and that's pretty much at this point the theory of idiocracy is truth. We have dumbed down ourselves, whether it's through social media or podcast. Yeah. Giving middle-aged men a microphone to the world. Jesus. What a terrible idea. So that's what it's about more than, that was just kind of contrived delivery.
There's a great story Mike Judge tells about when they're making the film. His costume designer came up to him because they were having to make, like I said, that all the shirts and everything have to be made custom because they're just filled with like logos and everything. she was like, "Hey, I found this company that makes these plastic shoes, and if we use these, we can save thousands of dollars off of our budget."
And what if happens if people like them before the movie comes out? And he goes, "That'll never happen."
Yeah, she's like, "These things are so ugly and cheap, no one would do it." And those shoes were Crocs. So yeah, by the time, because they held on to the movie for a year.
Adam is now showing his Croc
I'm
collection.
literally wearing them as we speak.
Those are his Air Crocs.
Air Croc, Croc Jordans.
It succeeds. It is a bit on the nose, but it's almost like we were at the tipping point, so it had to be. Kind of to Adam's point of meeting the audience where they are.
Right.
Like, we are here.
Yes. That's actually, I mean, that's kind of what the narrator was like. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm curious if you took out all the narration and then if you screened this film to, say, like an 18-year-old today who had no concept of it, never heard of it, didn't know, how would they take it like Beavis and Butthead as a like, oh, that's awesome. Like, oh, I wish my name was Nacho or or Frito, right? Like, or would they get, oh, you're the butt of the joke, you're not the.
I think the interesting thing about this film, no one thinks that they're the dumb people.
Yeah,
like when you watch the film, you're at least
That's a great point, actually.
Owen Wilson. You're not the guano, the sports drink you're pouring on
right
on plants because it's what plants crave.
Yeah.
Like, even though in reality you may be like,
Yeah, that's actually, and we may be. For all we know, maybe we're the idiots. I don't know.
Yeah, we have a podcast where we talk about movies. It's not like we're like,
changing the world.
Right. We're not discovering X-rays over here. We are part of the problem.
Yeah.
I just don't care.
I think like this has such a great cast in it. Like I said, we've already mentioned Terry Crews.
Yeah. And
Luke
lots
Wilson.
of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Luke Wilson, like I said, does great as just like an average everyman.
Mm-hmm.
Maya Rudolph. But there's also like David Herman, who is absolutely hilarious in everything he does. And he plays, I think, the Secretary of State. And I love, like, at the end of every sentence, he says, "Brought to you by Carl's Jr." It's like, why do you say that? Because they pay me every time I say that. "Brought to you by Carl's Jr."
Well, didn't he get that position by like winning a contest?
No, there's like a 15-year-old kid.
Oh yeah,
that's like that's I can't remember what he's the secretary of, but and then Stephen Root plays a judge.
Mm-hmm.
Very great in it, and Thomas Hayden Church pops up as the CEO of Brondo. Because they wind up, Luke Wilson's character, when he finds out that they're actually watering the crops with Brondo. And he didn't even know why, but they explained it to us because electrolytes are salt. And so they were essentially salting the ground. And therefore, creating these dust bowls and everying. So it's like,
plants crave.
Yeah, let's use water. You mean like from a toilet? So when they replace it with water, then like Brondo's stock like drops to zero, and it like employs over half the people in the country, so the economy goes to crap. It's utterly silly, utterly ridiculous.
One of the best sight gags of that is when Dax, speaking of toilets, is when Dax Shepard's introduced on screen and he's watching TV, and there's like a 5 or 6 minute scene of crap, what's his name? Luke Wilson waking up out of the pod, and we're watching Dax Shepard in it because he crashes into Dax's living room, and he's watching like reality TV, and then
name the show.
Is it Ow My Balls? Is that the name of it?
The number one show on violence television.
And so then all that, like during this 5 minute, scene, he ultimately stands up, and his living room chair is the toilet. and he pulls up his pants as he's getting it. That is a classic sight gag right there. That's Three Stooges level. Like, that's really funny.
It is very smart because they even have a little bit of the surveillance state because everybody has essentially a tattoo with a barcode,
right?
That tells you who they are, and that's how they make money or exchange money and all that kind of stuff. And so everywhere he goes, because he's a felon at one point, he would go somewhere. If he lifts up his arm, it scans his barcode, so they know. So there's a bit about the surveillance state there too. And probably one of my favorite bits is like this woman is at the Carl Jr.'s, was just like an automated kiosk. And she's trying to get her food. It's like, you didn't give me my food. And it's like, well, you need more money. And it's like, but my children are starving. It's like, your children are starving. You're a bad parent. We've contacted the police.
No, it's your children are now in the custody of Carl's Jr.
Yes.
And then the cops show up and turn to Luke Wilson and they go, "Are you the unfit mother?"
And there's a big thing like the way Brondo like became the thing irrigating crops is they essentially just bought the Food and Drug Administration and other aspects of the government. So yeah, there's a lot of smart criticism there that's very quick, and very rabbit punch.
That's the cutting satire more than the goofiness. It's those little jabs that they're sliding in that, like, that's why this is this way, and you're laughing and you're like, oh, but it is that way. Corporations are, determining policy. Oh no. So you laugh until you think about it. It's like one of those films, like usually when you like think about something later, you're like, oh, that's crap. You think about this film later and you're like, what? That wasn't funny at all.
It's like when you tell a story to a crowd of people you're not super close to about your childhood, and you're laughing. You're like,
you realize.
And then my dad, he turned around and he just clobbered me with a bat, and it was so funny. And then everybody's like, you look around, and everybody's like crying, and like, oh, this story's not funny at all.
You get like 5 references to therapists.
Yeah. Turns out I was a victim.
But yes, Idiocracy, great film. Everyone should watch it.
Watch it again. Get sad.
Get sad.
Laugh through your tears, man. But I am the great Pelagio. So I want to talk about it in a related note. As Jason, I think these films are cousins, kissing cousins. I want to talk about the film Network.
And now, the distinguished television news commentator, Mr. Howard Beale.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like at this moment to announce that I will be retiring from this program in 2 weeks' time because of poor ratings. Since this show was the only thing I had going for me in my life, I have decided to kill myself. I'm going to blow my brains out right on this program a week from today.
What the hell's going on?
Prepare yourself for a perfectly outrageous motion picture.
Howard Beale went up there last night and said what every American feels, that he's tired of all the bull.
Thanks, Diana. We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
I am not putting Howard back on the air.
It's not your show anymore, Max. It's mine.
I got a feeling I'm being made.
You are.
Got to warn you, I don't do anything on my first date.
We'll see. I want a show developed based on the activities of a terrorist group.
Well, Ahmed, I want to make a TV star out of you. Just like Archie Bunker.
There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and DuPont and Exxon. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale?
Why me?
It was your own television, dummy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Network News Hour with Howard Beale.
I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change.
How many stations does this go
You've
out
got to
live?
get mad.
67.
You've got to say... I want you to get up right now. Go to your windows, stick your head out, and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Herb?
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Ted?
I'm mad as hell! I'm not going to take it anymore!
Network by Patty Chayefsky, directed by Sidney Lumet, produced by Howard Gottfried. Television will never be the same.
Which I think we may have talked about before. This is, at least in passing, where the I'm
Yeah,
mad
we've
as hell.
referenced it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm mad as hell and not going to take it anymore comes from. So this is, it is one of those films that comes as close as you can get to say, and maybe not at the time. I think it was 76, 70 that it came out. It was probably a little more, but if you watch it today, we're at the line or over it. So
I've never seen this movie, so I'll say that.
So Howard Beale is this news anchor, and he's about to get canned. Essentially, like, he just says F it and, threatens suicide, and he goes off, and that's what, like, the I'm as mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore comes from. And basically, Network is like, hey, man, the ratings are really good. Let's encourage that.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. Damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I want you to get up right now. Get up, go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change.
How many stations does this go out?
You've got to get mad.
67. I know it goes to Louisville and Atlanta.
I'm not going to take this anymore. Then we'll figure out what to do about the depression and the inflation and the oil crisis.
Most of the film is
them figuring out how to exploit him.
Yes, they're exploiting the breakdown of a man that they essentially caused through their duplicity and through the, it's a critique of journalism and sensationalism, and culminates with him actually being assassinated on air because he becomes more apocalyptic and he's like very fervent and believes these things he's saying. And so to go once again to wrestling, Ric Flair, in a great shoot, talked about he was yelling at Eric Bischoff, and he said, like when Sting won the title, we were all back there and there were tears in our eyes, and you looked at me and you said, that's great television. And I said, that's not great television, that's real. And so that's the energy that this is bringing, that there's always the exploitation of the genuine and what the ultimate consequences of that is. It is very prescient. It's like you watch this, and this is before Fox News. This is before MSNBC. This is before politically incorrect and Bill Maher and stuff like that. But it's that stuff was kind of nascent. Like, what was it? Morton Downey Jr. may have been. It pretty much says like, this is where we're headed, and
we got there.
Right, we got there and beyond, like to where assassination and suicide on television. Actually, this happened. There was, I think it was in Florida in the 80s, that someone had a news anchor took their own life, and there was another news anchor that was killed on live television. So it happened. It's real now, but it is not, unlike Idiocracy, which is, it's one of those things where like you have to laugh about it or go crazy. Network is like, no, you go crazy. And what's just seeing it, 40 years in the future and looking back it's just amazing. I think Sidney Lumet was the director, like how they just saw it, they saw the road we were on, made this film like so he said, as a warning, like this is what's going to happen. And it's exactly what happened. It's very sobering.
There's a lot of good also like imagery connecting it to religious fervor, because like the set, they give him his own show, and the set is almost like a televangelist setup.
Yeah,
at the time. And there's also a great scene where it's the only scene Ned Beatty is in, and he got like an Oscar nomination for this one scene.
Wow.
And he comes in, and he's there. He's like the president of the network. He is there to bring this character in line and to essentially make him change what he's saying on screen to fit with network doctrine and with what they want to push out. And he speaks very much like a preacher in a pulpit.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. Is that clear? You think you merely stopped a business deal? That is not the case. The Arabs have taken billions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back. It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. You are an old man who thinks in terms of nations and peoples. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, rins, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale?
Mm-hmm.
And he's shot from a low angle to give him a lot of power, and so it's an extraordinary thing to see and experience. And Ned Beatty is one of the greatest character actors ever, and he pulls it off fantastically in this scene.
And what's funny is you'll often see this kind of cited as a dark comedy. In maybe 1976, it was like watching Idiocracy.
Yeah.
But now, it is like the absurdism. You watch it now and you're like, well, they're not going far enough. they're not, they're not going nearly far enough. This isn't Bill O'Reilly or Sean Hannity. This is lightweight stuff. So it's interesting from that perspective. And they didn't predict like the 24-hour news cycle, which I think was kind of like really lit a fire under this kind of thing. But the sensationalism of the news and the crafting of the narrative based on ratings and corporate greed is there. And, there's no doubt that that's the landscape we live in today. 100%, not to be too serious, but, news is no longer of public interest. It is for profit. It just is. And that's the world we live in. This show is the last bastion of altruistic outpouring.
It's certainly not for profit.
We lose money year after year for your benefits.
That's why we're having a funding drive. Terry Gross will be on next week. It's this guy we know that's Terry that doesn't ever take a bath. Call him Terry Gross.
If you're confused, our GoFundMe does not list this as being a drive for a podcast, but yet for a kidney transplant. That's intentional. Just don't be confused by it. Just don't.
Week after week, we stand outside the same ATM saying that we're out of gas and just trying to get home. Didn't I fill your tank last week? Yeah. So, but I ironically ran out of gas here again.
I made it home, but I left my wallet here. I had to come back in that.
Third time this week. I'll be. If you haven't seen Network, it is one of those like top 100 films on AFA or whatever. But it is. Do not go into it expecting a good time. It is a good film. It is compelling. Faye Dunaway, like everyone is just very understood the assignment.
Yeah, a last hurrah for William Holden.
Yes. Hindsight is definitely a downer on this one. I wished I could have seen it from its intention. And this is one of those things that the death of the, like this has outlasted the director, and now looking at it, it's just completely prescient. Like every single thing that happens, things that were absurd, just absolutely out there, just like the ouch my balls show, like, well, here we are.
Let's be honest, Jackass was on the air when Idiocracy came out.
That's true. Yeah.
That is true. It was still before MILF Manor, and 30 Rock predicted that pretty well. So, Adam, the internet will be abuzz with this because this is a popular topic.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can put our own little brick pit spin on this film.
So, this is a movie that, when we were talking at the onset of this, that I think this failed to meet the ostensibly stated goal of being a satire, to the point where, and to point out to your comment about media literacy, Roger Ebert did not think this was satire when he wrote the review of it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I don't think there's anyone that could argue that Roger Ebert doesn't have media literacy.
Have you seen Beyond the Valley of the Dolls?
But
talking about kicking a man when he's in his grave.
He lost his voice, for God's sake. Come on, have a heart.
Couldn't even defend himself from that one.
At the time the film came out, critics...
Well, tell us what the film is first.
I'm setting it up, Jason. I'm setting it up.
You've been setting it up for 5 minutes.
Critics didn't get... If you could monologue for 48 minutes, I can talk for...
We have a podcaster down. Shots fired.
Critics didn't get it. Critics didn't understand that it was supposed to be satire. And then I think only after the fact did the director say, oh, yeah, no, that was supposed to be satire. And I don't even know if he really believes that. The movie, of course, is Starship Troopers.
In every age there is a cause worth fighting for. But in the future, the greatest threat to our survival will not be man at all.
Hey, kid, what's going on? It's war! We're going to war!
Now the youth of tomorrow must travel across the stars to defend our world.
We are a generation commanded by fate to defend humankind.
Everyone fights, no one quits.
We are going in with first wave. You smash the entire area. You kill anything that has more than 2 legs. You get me? We get you, sir!
But they will face an enemy more devastating than any ever imagined.
Here they come!
Incoming!
Mayday, this is Rock 2.
We're under attack, sir. We need retrieval now.
Someone made a damn mistake.
The bugs laid a trap for us, didn't they?
TriStar Pictures takes you to the front lines of the next frontier.
Kill them all!
Starship Troopers.
The classic example of this sort of topic, which if you Google it on the internet, the first thing that's going to come up, right, is was it supposed to be satire or not? And this many years removed from that, the movie came out in 1997. The myth of it is that it was always meant to be satire and that people just didn't get it. They were too, they weren't cool enough to understand.
They were too jingoistic to realize.
But the reality of it is, and to this day, is to the point I was making earlier, if you showed this cold to the right demographic of individuals, they're going to buy 100% as like a great action film to be
sure. Well, here's the thing. I think it can be both.
That's what Ebert ultimately said when he came around, basically. Yeah.
Like, there's no doubt that, like, when Doogie Howser comes out wearing a Hugo Boss inspired uniform,
right?
Like, it's not subtle.
No, but it was missed, right? I mean,
so here's my something I find interesting. I know a lot of military people that really enjoy this
movie. Yes,
but they also are very aware that it is satire. And so I think that is why, like, they get it more. They're like, yeah. They're part of the machine that would produce something like this. So there's a strong contingent of military folk that both love this film as a kick-ass action film and as a satirical take on fascistic propaganda.
So I watched it last night. And I will say on rewatch, the AI, they spent all of their money on the graphics for the time. All the AI generated stuff, the space scenes, the bugs, the whatever, all the gore and stuff. Fantastic. I have no complaints about that. But even as just a vehicle for this I'll even say quote unquote satire, it's not I didn't like it as much as I did when I was young. Like, I haven't watched it. This is not like a on rotation movie for me. I mean, I've seen it probably a couple times before this, but I was of an age where I knew when this came out, and I probably saw it then, that it was, I got it. I get the joke, right? I get the satire. But on rewatch in college, I was probably in that second group, which I was like, I don't care that it's satire. That I don't care about the high-minded ideas it's supposed to represent. I just want to watch it as a sci-fi movie. And then now, in my old and cynical days, I'm like, this doesn't succeed as a movie either. Like, it's just okay as a film. It's not.
See, I'll disagree with you there. I think it does a lot of good things as a film. I think it's very entertaining, no matter which way you take it. I mean, Denise Richards.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Michael Ironside,
right? Doogie Howser.
Michael Ironside chews the scenery in this film and has some of the greatest lines ever. Clancy Brown.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know, man. Like, there, I think that
if you watch it again, here's my criticism real quick. If you watch it again, if you take away the high-minded idea that it's satire and take away the low-minded idea that it's just a great flick, but you watch it for the narrative arc, the story isn't great. It's just not. It's just, to me, it wasn't like.
See, I'm going to disagree because I feel it's a series of vignettes of a propaganda film. Which way either way you read it.
Right.
I think there's some subtle, interesting things in it. Like Doogie Howser's not a psychic, but I think that's something that's lost. Is that they push him as a psychic, but he's not. He's a more of a Goebbels kind of, like when they capture the brain bug and he's like, it's afraid. Like, of course it is, man. Like,
right.
Like you're not
providing new information.
Right.
but he does talk to his ferret and give his ferret commands.
Yes.
But
we have trained rats in our house, so
I think this movie is one of those that, because there's things that it's clearly not being subtle about.
Right.
And for people to still not get it, it's on the viewer at that point. Because if you're not willing to actually take in the movie as it is, then I mean that's on you. I had a guy, when it came out, he saw it before I had a chance, but he was one of those, like, I'm an intellectual pothead type dudes. And he was like, "Oh, I'm surprised that they didn't have a recruitment boot out of the front. It's recruitment propaganda for the military." And I watched it, like, they're breaking people's arms and people are like getting shot in the head in training. How is that recruitment for the military?
I've known some crayon. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Please don't come beat me up, Marine.
Okay, so if you look at it from a perspective that how do you say that director's name? I can't ever get his name right. Verhoeven, yeah. If you take it from the perspective, so the book, the Heinlein story.
This I honestly think that this was Starship Troopers was tacked on at some point to a script that was not Starship Troopers.
That is true. That is.
They essentially, they wanted to do a giant, like, 1950s B bug
movie. Yes.
Yeah. And they found it, like, Starship Trooper fills all these gaps.
An executive read the script, is like, oh, this is just a knockoff of this Heinlein story I read as a kid. Let's tack that on because it'll be a more cohesive story.
Well, so where I think the film is satirizing, like, kind of the jingoistic and fascistic nationalist, or whatever you want to say, kind of tendencies of nation states. That was certainly not the intent of the novel.
Right. It's a different story, yeah.
Right, but my only issue is that because of the film was filmed that way, that Heinlein's book is often maligned by people that haven't read it.
Yes,
and
they don't understand
it's essentially Romans in space. It's like their whole.
It occurs to me that we haven't actually told what the story of the movie is.
Doesn't matter,
but it's essentially aliens in a distant part of our galaxy are using asteroids ostensibly to seed and populate other planets around the galaxy, and Earth is under attack by these roving asteroids they keep hurling at us, and the bugs have some kind of sentience, but it's unclear to what extent. And so an asteroid finally gets through and destroys a big part of South America. So the unified the unified global government, I almost said American government, there you go. The unified global government decides that their militaristic aims should extend beyond merely protecting Earth, but to go to the homeland of the bugs and destroy them there or whatever. So the way the satire plays out is we're following a cohort of young teenagers from high school through the ultimate battle where they capture one of the so-called brain bugs, one of the sentient bugs that's running the program for the aliens. And as Josh pointed out, they're in vignettes and they're interspersed by these, like, propaganda commercials that you would see as a pop-up ad. Would you like to know more? And when it clicks on a whatever, it's like you see the mouse move to click to the next tab or whatever.
Young people from all over the globe are joining up to fight for the future.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part, too.
They're doing their part. Are you? Join the mobile infantry and save the world. Service guarantees citizenship. A murderer was captured this morning and tried today.
Guilty.
Sentence, death. Execution tonight at 6. All net, all channels. Would you like to know more? Federal scientists struggle to explain the intelligent military actions of the arachnids.
When a colony reaches a certain size, 300 generations or something, it gets smarter.
Insects with intelligence? Have you ever met one? I can't believe I am hearing this nonsense.
You just
this
wait
is the most
a
ridiculous
moment.
conversation I have ever had.
There is some kind of bug that we haven't seen yet. A leadership caste, a hive brain.
Brain bugs? Frankly, I find the idea of a bug that thinks offensive.
Those little pieces of it are like, I'll concede that's a clever device to kind of show the progression of the story. Where I have real trouble with this is that in reading about this and researching the movie, is that even people who are self-aware that it's supposed to satirize fascism still fetishize it. People who are fascists actually are like, see how good things could be. Like they're like that's what I was like. They use it, and this is where I came up with that statement that when I was reading these reviews of this movie from a pro-fascist standpoint. If the movie's satirical elements are so heavy that they're missed by some percentage of the population, then it is just propaganda.
Right. They cross the line.
Yeah. And I think
I think some of the issue is that I think Verhoeven lives in satire in his mind. I think his intent is, but I also think that ultimately he's not successful in it hardly at all. Because I mean, like, I think RoboCop is a satire.
Yes.
Total Recall.
Total Recall, yeah. Showgirls is a satire, but none of these things read satirically.
Right.
The intent is there, but the execution is exactly what it's supposed to be satirizing. So on that level, he's a failure. But on the level of like RoboCop's awesome.
Okay.
Like,
so here's where I would quibble about that. His intent is, in my opinion, to have plausible deniability. It's not necessarily
probably.
Maybe
I think maybe something to that.
Right. Like, oh, people were mad this is a pro-fascist movie. Oh, I was being satirical. Whoops, I got caught. You know what I mean?
No, because they talk about when he went to Michael Ironside to do the role, and Ironside's like, no, this is a because even before this movie, a lot of people thought Highland's Starship Trooper was a fascist novel, and he's like, no, he's a fascist. I'm not going to do that. It's like, no, we're making fun of it, and that's how he got Ironside. So it was done, and also the script was done by Ed Neumeyer, who wrote RoboCop and wrote RoboCop as a satire.
And he's no idiot. I agree with that.
So he's like in RoboCop with the commercials and everything. He came up with the idea of the newsreel,
the segue
things.
Yeah.
Right. So what's interesting to me though is like that there's often overlooked issues like the fact that Earth is losing through this whole film.
Yeah, right.
It is presented in a way that like they are not, but if you pay attention, they're losing every battle. They are not,
except for the very end when they capture the brain or whatever. Right.
Yeah. Almost a Pyrrhic victory. They caught a brain bug,
and it killed a bunch of people.
Right.
And, they lost a bunch of ships too, and everything.
Right. And that was like it's like catching a lieutenant. It's not they're not making a dent in the war effort really. And if you watch what's really happening on a high level is Earth is losing, and so like that's when like the propaganda aspect kind of rises to the top. You have to kind of look at it holistically, like. This film is trying to convince you that they're not losing. And granted, most people are like, yeah. But it's like, even Johnny Rico is ultimately just becoming a sacrifice to the war machine. Come on, you apes, you want to live forever.
Yeah, until I die or find somebody better, right? That's
and you also see the fact that he's copying everything he's told.
Right. Which is which is a hallmark of fascism, by the way. But
yeah. And I also love the fact that you talked about how it's fascist. You never really got into the fascist aspect of it. You got into the militaristic aspect of it.
Fair.
But not the fact that the reason that the main character goes in to the military, one, he's following a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And second is that's the only way to get citizenship. So the only way to actually participate in government,
right,
to vote or to hold office is you have to do military service.
Right.
And they make military service so difficult, so hard to fathom that, everything you're going to have to do in it. Like I said, your life is essentially forfeit on their whim.
That most people won't do.
Yeah. They actively discourage it. And that's a part of it that they didn't really get from the novel.
Yeah.
Because, there is like one of the scenes that's in the book and in the book, or in the movie and the book, is when they go to sign up, there's the guy with like all the prosthetics and everything in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, welcome to the infantry. It made me the man I am today. And it's just talking about but in the book, like he takes off all of his prosthetics. So he's sitting there with limbs missing.
Yeah.
And he is there deliberately to dissuade people from signing up. And there's even a line when, after Johnny signs up, he says, you know what they do if you don't show up tomorrow to ship out? It's like, what? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and there's the walk. All you got to do is walk the walk of shame to get out. There's no like other consequences to leave or whatever.
Well, and there's also in the novel there are other ways to gain citizenship.
Right.
It's not just
there's cultural and I can't remember. Like there's like you can do other contributions to society.
Right, but you have the whole precept, and it's very Roman Empire-esque that you have to serve the state in order to participate in the decisions the state makes,
basically,
and that's
different. And then
that is very different than what is presented. Yes,
and here's what's fascinating to me is like as recently as March of this year, Screen Rant did another like updated article which says the title of which is "Starship Trooper has a secret meaning you don't know." Like, and if you Google like Reddit about Starship Trooper, there's hundreds of people going, "Is it really satire?" Like, it's that like the fact that there's so much confusion is the part where
it's one of the 4 debates on the internet.
Yeah, that's great.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Is
Starship Trooper satire?
Starship Trooper satire? And it's like doesn't matter.
That's hilarious. What are the other two? We should make our own list.
Was Mr. Rogers a sniper?
Yeah.
Totally toughest son of a bitch I ever met. Lee Marvin said, Captain Kangaroo.
Killed Kangaroo.
So, but I would say that I like Starship Troopers. I think it's funny. I think it works as an action film. It probably fails as a satire, but I don't think that disqualifies it as an enjoyable film. And again, you can watch a film and disagree with its politics. I
may have made the mistake of reading about it last night before I watched it and realizing that it is like a fascist's favorite film. And so then I turn it on and I'm like, oh, screw those guys. Like I had that in my mind while I'm watching it.
Luckily, I know lots of libertarians. I don't know if I know any fascists in real life, so I guess I'm blessed in that.
Two sides of the same coin.
Libertarians are mostly just selfish people. I guess everybody is. I would say that that's a good example of a film that crosses that line.
Yeah,
that it's trying to get, but up to network and Idiocracy, I think
succeed. Yeah,
get a lot closer. Yeah, without going over.
Like The Price is Right.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Satire is betting $1. When everyone else is overbetted, or someone says 800, and you go 801. That's satire.
The highest form of art.
Adam, in a non-satirical manner, or satirical if you wish, we may not be able to tell if executed properly. Tell everybody where they can find us.
in hell.
That was parody.
I love the fact that after 4 years of us making fun of you always saying, tell them where they can find us, and us saying they already found us, they're listening.
If you'd like to find us outside of the medium in which you're currently participating,
if you would like to
you may contact us by going to linktree/brickpit, where you'll find links to our social media and our email address and all other forms of communication. We'd love to hear from you, and we will play any clips that you'd like to provide us on the air. If you'd like to make a comment about your fascist tendencies and love of Starship Trooper, well,
if you'd like to know more,
if you click here. So we're doing our part. Are you? So, with that highlight reel behind us, we would like to sincerely thank you for sticking around this long, and we'll catch you next time on the Brick Pit.